"I'll have you walking again," the grease-stained mechanic declared. Lady Victoria Sterling, the wealthiest woman in the city, burst into laughter from her titanium wheelchair. But when he revealed who he truly was, her laughter froze forever. Lady Victoria Sterling adjusted the diamond brooch on her Italian silk blouse as her chauffeur pushed her customized titanium wheelchair into Davies Auto Services. The place reeked of burnt oil, sweat, and honest endeavor. Three things she had learned to despise during her 42 years of privileged life. Her bespoke designer heels barely touched the chrome footrests of her chair, as if even in her condition, she refused to be fully connected to anything as ordinary as the ground. Lady Sterling, Mr. Finch, her trusted chauffeur, spoke with that permanently apologetic tone all her employees had perfected. "May I remind you, the Mercedes is at the official dealership workshop. This place is merely temporary, while we await imported parts from Germany." "I'm not interested in your explanation, Finch," Victoria replied without even looking at him, her eyes scanning the garage with the same disgust she would use to inspect a rubbish dump. "Just make sure no one touches my Bentley with their grubby hands, and I want to be out of this squalid place in under 30 minutes. Davies Auto Services was a 2-story brick building whose walls had once been white, but now displayed the stains of time and hard work. 3 hydraulic lifts held vehicles in various stages of repair, and the metallic clatter of tools against metal created an industrial symphony Victoria found utterly repugnant. Several mechanics worked intently, their blue uniforms stained with oil, their faces marked by the sun and the effort of earning an honest living. But what bothered Victoria most was not the place itself, but the simple fact of being there. For the last 8 years, ever since the horse-riding accident that had shattered her spine and confined her to this chair, Victoria had developed a perfect system for never having to interact with common people. She had a chauffeur, 3 personal assistants, a private medical team living in her ancestral home, and enough money to ensure the world came to her, not the other way around. "Good afternoon," a male voice interrupted her disgusted thoughts. "How can we help you?" Victoria looked up, and what she saw confirmed every one of her prejudices. The man approaching was a mechanic of approximately 35 years, with slightly long black hair, a 3-day beard that urgently needed a professional shave, and a blue uniform so grease-stained it looked like it had never seen a washing machine. His hands were covered in grime, and he wore a spanner hanging from his belt, as if it were a sword. But what irritated Victoria most was his smile. It was genuine, warm, the kind of smile that suggested this man genuinely enjoyed his work and his life, despite being obviously poor and uneducated. "Are you the owner?" Victoria asked with that tone she had perfected over decades. That tone that made it clear she considered the person in front of her as something she had found stuck to the sole of her shoe. "I'm Liam Davies." The man extended his hand, and then, noticing the grease, withdrew it with an embarrassed chuckle. "Sorry, not appropriate." He continued, "Yes, this is my garage. My father founded it 30 years ago, and I inherited it 5 years back." "How charming." Victoria pronounced the word as if it were poison. "My Bentley has a minor electrical system issue. I need you to check it quickly, and then we're leaving without touching anything else. Understood?" Liam nodded, but Victoria noticed something strange in his eyes. There wasn't the fearful submission she expected from people of his class. There was something else, something that seemed almost like compassion, that infuriated her even more. "Of course, Lady Sterling." Liam approached the black Bentley Continental GT that Mr. Finch had carefully parked at the entrance. "What specific symptoms have you noticed?" "I haven't noticed anything," Victoria replied with irritation. Finch noticed the dashboard lights flickering. "I don't stoop to noticing mechanical problems. That's what I have employees for." As Liam opened the Bentley's bonnet, Victoria watched his every move with absolute distrust. His hands, despite the grease, moved with a precision and certainty that suggested years of experience. He connected an electronic diagnostic device and began checking for error codes with a concentration Victoria found vaguely irritating. How dared this man be so focused on his work when she was present? "Lady Sterling," Liam spoke after several minutes, his voice calm but professional. "The problem is more complex than it appears. The body control module has an intermittent fault, causing short circuits in several systems. It's not immediately dangerous, but it needs replacing." "And how long will that take?" Victoria asked with growing impatience. "If I order the part today, it should arrive in about a week. The installation work will take approximately 4 hours." "A week?" Victoria almost shrieked. "You're completely mad. I need my car now." "I understand your frustration, Lady Sterling." Liam maintained his calm tone, which irritated Victoria even further. but these parts come directly from England. They are specialized components not stocked locally. I don't care where they come from. Victoria slammed the armrest of her chair with fury. Call whoever you have to call, pay whatever you have to pay, but get that part here tomorrow. Liam looked at her for a long moment, and Victoria saw something change in his expression. The professional patience was giving way to something more critical, more evaluative. Lady Sterling, he finally said, I understand you're accustomed to things working according to your will, but physics and logistics don't respond to shouting or money. The part will arrive when it arrives. The silence that followed was so tense that even Mr. Finch, accustomed to Victoria's outbursts, involuntarily took a step back. How dare you speak to me like that? Victoria hissed, her face reddening. Do you have any idea who I am? Yes, Liam replied with a calm that was more devastating than any shout. You are Lady Victoria Sterling, heiress to the Sterling Pharmaceuticals fortune, director of 6 companies, and, according to what I've read in the news, one of the wealthiest women in the country. You're also someone who apparently never learned that respect isn't bought with money. Victoria gasped. For 8 years, no one, absolutely no one, had spoken to her like that. Her wealth had built a protective wall where every word was measured, every interaction controlled, every person knew exactly how far they could go. I will destroy you, Victoria enunciated each word with pure venom. I will make sure you never work in this city again. I will buy this building and demolish it. I will make your life a living hell. You can try, Liam shrugged, returning to examine the engine, but that won't make your car part arrive any faster. It was then that Victoria noticed something. On the workshop wall, behind Liam, were several framed diplomas. They were difficult to see clearly from where she was, but one of them seemed to bear the seal of a university. A mechanic with a university degree? Impossible. What are those papers on the wall? She asked, her curiosity temporarily overcoming her fury. Liam followed her gaze and smiled slightly. Memories of another life. What does that mean? It means we all have stories we prefer not to tell, Lady Sterling. You have yours, I have mine. The cryptic answer only intensified Victoria's irritation. She hated not knowing things. She hated feeling someone had information she didn't control. It was in that moment of absolute tension when something happened that would change everything. Victoria, in her fury, tried to move her chair abruptly forward to get away from Liam, but one of the wheels hit a small rise in the uneven workshop floor. The chair tilted dangerously to one side. Victoria screamed, her hands desperately grasping for something to hold onto. Mr. Finch was too far away. The other mechanics hadn't noticed. Everything happened in slow motion, but before the chair completely toppled, Liam moved. It wasn't a casual or clumsy movement. It was precise, calculated, perfect. In an instant, he was beside her, his arms supporting her with a firmness that suggested professional training. He stabilized the chair with an ease that seemed impossible, and in the process, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in 8 years, her muscles. Liam had held her in a way that had pressed certain points on her back, and for a fraction of a second, she had felt something. Not pain, not the usual nothingness, but a real, tangible sensation. Are you all right? Liam asked, making sure the chair was completely stable before letting go. Victoria didn't respond immediately. She was processing what had just happened. The doctors had been clear. Her spinal cord injury was complete. There was no sensation below her waist. It was permanent, irreversible, final, but she had just felt something. What did you do? She whispered, her voice trembling. I stopped you from falling, Liam replied, clearly confused by the question. No. Victoria grabbed his arm with surprising strength. How did you hold me? Where exactly did you place your hands? Liam blinked, even more confused. I supported your mid-back and stabilized your weight by distributing it through specific pressure points. It's basic injury prevention technique. I learned in... He stopped abruptly, as if he had been about to reveal something he preferred to keep hidden. Learned where? Victoria pressed, all her attention now focused on this strange mechanic who had just made her feel something the world's best neurosurgeons had told her was impossible. Liam pulled away, his expression closing off. In workplace safety training, all mechanics learn basic first aid techniques. It was an obvious lie. Victoria had known liars all her life. She had made fortunes identifying when people concealed information. This man was lying, and that only intensified her curiosity. I felt something, Liam, she said, her voice barely a whisper now. When you held me, I felt something in my back. Doctors say that's impossible. Liam looked at her for a long moment, and Victoria saw something changing in his eyes. It was as if he was making a decision. evaluating options, calculating risks. Doctors are usually right, he finally said, but his tone suggested there was much more he wasn't saying. Don't lie to me, Liam, Victoria ordered, but for the first time in years. It wasn't an order based on arrogance, but on genuine desperation. What did you just do? Liam sighed deeply, like a man who knew he was about to cross a bridge he couldn't uncross. Lady Sterling, he began slowly, may I ask you some questions about your injury? Why would a mechanic want to know about my injury? Victoria responded, but there was less venom in her voice. Now there was something else. Small, fragile hope. Because before I was a mechanic, Liam paused significantly. I was other things, and those other things taught me to recognize certain patterns. Your injury was classified as complete. Victoria nodded slowly. T6, complete. Total paraplegia. No sensation, no movement, no hope. And doctors performed tests for residual neurological function? The question was so specific, so technical, that Victoria felt a shiver run down her spine. Ironically, in the part where she supposedly couldn't feel anything. How do you know those terms? She asked. Please answer the question. Yes, multiple tests, MRI scans, electromyography, evoked potentials, everything confirmed complete injury. Liam nodded thoughtfully, as if processing complex information. Then he did something completely unexpected. He knelt in front of her chair, completely ignoring the fact that his already dirty uniform now got even dirtier against the greasy floor. Lady Sterling, he said with a seriousness that dramatically contrasted with his appearance as an ordinary mechanic. I'm going to tell you something you'll probably think is crazy. You can laugh at me, you can threaten to destroy me again, but I need to say it anyway. Victoria waited, her heart pounding with an intensity she hadn't felt in years. I can make you walk again. The silence that followed was so absolute that Victoria could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights in the workshop. Then, like a wave finally breaking against the shore, she started to laugh. It wasn't a delicate or restrained laugh. It was hysterical laughter, the kind of laughter that arises when something is so absurd, so ridiculously impossible, that the mind has no other response available. You, Victoria could barely speak between laughs. You, a grease-stained mechanic who can barely speak properly, are going to do what the best neurosurgeons from Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and Mayo Clinic said was impossible? Liam didn't move, didn't reply. He simply looked at her with that serene expression that was beginning to deeply irritate Victoria. This is incredible. Victoria continued laughing, tears streaming down her cheeks. Finch, did you hear that? This man believes he can make me walk. With what? With engine oil and a spanner? Mr. Finch looked profoundly uncomfortable, unsure whether to laugh with his boss or defend the mechanic who had been professional with them. But the other mechanics had heard, and instead of laughing or making mocking comments, they had all stopped their work. They were looking at Liam with expressions Victoria couldn't interpret. It wasn't mockery or disbelief. It was something more akin to respect, a shared understanding of something she didn't comprehend. I'm done. Victoria finally controlled her laughter, wiping her tears. This has been enough entertainment for one day. Finch, let's go. We'll find another garage. I can prove it, Liam said calmly. Victoria stopped in the process of turning to leave. Excuse me? I can demonstrate that there is residual neurological activity in your spinal cord, here, now, without elaborate medical equipment. The absolute audacity of the claim left Victoria momentarily speechless. Then, something changed in her expression. It was curiosity mixed with that kind of cruelty that arises when someone wants to see another fail spectacularly. All right, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm going to give you exactly 5 minutes to demonstrate your ridiculous claim. And when you fail, and you will fail because this is utter madness, I'm going to enjoy watching how I destroy your life piece by piece. Understood, Liam nodded. May I touch your back? I need to do some manual assessments. Victoria hesitated. For 8 years, only her private medical team had touched her back. But the combination of morbid curiosity and the desire to see this man fail outweighed her resistance. Go ahead, do your best to make me walk. Miracle mechanic. Liam moved behind her chair. This might feel strange, he warned. I'm going to apply pressure to specific points on your spine. If you feel anything at all, even if it seems insignificant, tell me. I won't feel anything, Victoria replied with absolute certainty. Because there's nothing to feel. Liam began. His hands, despite the superficial grease, moved with a precision that was clearly medical. He pressed specific points along her spine, starting at the top and moving systematically downwards. And then, when he reached a specific point, just below where her injury had occurred. It happened. Victoria felt something. It wasn't pain. It wasn't exactly a sensation of touch either. It was more like an echo, as if someone were knocking on a door in a room she had assumed was completely empty and sealed. "Did you feel that?" Liam asked, his voice now completely professional, clinical. I don't know what I felt," Victoria admitted, her voice trembling. "Let's try something else," Liam continued. "I'm going to apply a technique called proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. It's a rehabilitation method that uses sensory receptors to activate dormant neurological pathways." Medical terms flowed from his mouth with the fluency of someone who had used them for years. Victoria felt as if the world were spinning around her. Over the next few minutes, Liam performed a series of maneuvers and tests that clearly required advanced medical training. At several points, Victoria felt those same strange echoes, those sensations that shouldn't exist according to everything the world's best doctors had told her. When he finished, Liam moved back in front of her, his expression now completely serious. "Lady Sterling," he said, "your injury is not as complete as you were told. There is residual neurological activity. Not much, but it's there. With the right treatment, with the appropriate rehabilitation, there is a small but real possibility of partial recovery." Victoria looked at him as if he were a ghost, an impossible made flesh. "Who are you?" she whispered. Liam stood up, wiping his hands on a rag that only made them dirtier. "Someone who also has stories they prefer not to tell. But I will tell you this. If you truly want to explore the possibility of recovery, I will need to see your complete medical records, and you will need to be willing to work harder than you have ever worked in your life." "Are you a doctor?" Victoria affirmed rather than asked. Liam didn't answer directly. "The 5 minutes are up. Do you still want to destroy my life?" Victoria opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. For the first time in 8 years, she didn't have a ready answer. She didn't have a plan of action. She didn't have absolute control of the situation. Because this grease-stained mechanic, this man she had despised and threatened, had just done something the world's best doctors had told her was completely impossible. He had given her hope, and now, as she looked at him with a mixture of awe, fear, and something that might have been involuntary respect, Victoria Sterling had to confront a devastating truth. She had completely misjudged this man. The question now was, what else had she been misjudging throughout her life? "Why?" Victoria finally found her voice, though it sounded strange even to her own ears. "Why would you help me after how I treated you?" Liam smiled sadly. "Because unlike you, Lady Sterling, I don't judge people's worth by their bank account or their behavior on a bad day. I judge by their potential for change." The words hung in the workshop air like a gentle but devastating accusation. Victoria knew in that moment that her life had just changed forever, only she didn't yet know how much. The next 3 days were the strangest in Lady Victoria Sterling's life. After the encounter at the garage, she had returned to her ancestral home in complete silence, ignoring Mr. Finch's worried questions. She had locked herself in her private study, a space with high ceilings and tall windows offering panoramic views of the city she practically owned, but which had never felt as distant as in that moment. On her solid mahogany desk lay her laptop, and on the screen, she had 3 digital medical files open simultaneously. These were her complete records from the last 8 years. Dozens of MRI scans, reports from world-renowned neurosurgeons, evaluations from spinal cord injury specialists, all reaching the same devastating conclusion: complete, irreversible, permanent injury. But she had felt something, those strange echoes Liam had provoked with his precise hands, and more than that, she had seen something in his eyes that the world's most expensive doctors had never shown. Genuine certainty mixed with a deep understanding of something that went beyond the numbers on a report. Her private phone, the one only 5 people in the world knew, vibrated. It was her personal assistant, Margaret. "Lady Sterling," Margaret's voice came through. "I found something interesting about Liam Davies." Victoria straightened in her chair. "Speak." "There's not much in public records. The garage has been in his name for 5 years, inherited from his father, but I found something in old newspaper archives. 10 years ago, there was a Dr. Liam Davies at the Central University Hospital. He was a neurosurgery resident, one of the brightest, according to the notes I found." Victoria's heart began to beat faster. And then he disappeared. He left the residency program halfway through his final year. There's no official explanation. It's as if he simply decided to stop being a doctor and become a mechanic. "Why would anyone do that?" Victoria murmured more to herself than to Margaret. "I'm still investigating, but, Lady Sterling, There's something else. I found an article from 9 years ago. Liam Davies' father, Arthur Davies, the garage owner, had a serious accident. He was in a coma for weeks. The article mentions his son left everything to care for him. The pieces began to fit. A brilliant neurosurgeon abandoning his career to care for his sick father. A man who clearly had the knowledge and skills but had chosen a completely different life. Margaret, prepare the car. We're going back to the garage. Are you sure, Lady Sterling? I thought you said you'd never return to that place. I've changed my mind. And Margaret, dig deeper. I want to know exactly what happened 9 years ago. 2 hours later, Victoria was back at Davies Auto Services. But this time her attitude was different. She didn't arrive with demands or threats. She arrived with questions. Liam was under an old Toyota, only his legs visible as he worked. When he heard the wheels of Victoria's chair approaching, he slid out with an expression of genuine surprise. Lady Sterling, I didn't expect to see you again. I didn't expect to be here either, Victoria admitted. For the first time, she truly looked at the garage, not with disgust, but with curiosity. The other mechanics worked with a coordinated efficiency that spoke of mutual respect and effective leadership. The place was clean, despite the nature of the work, and in the small adjoining office, there were shelves full of technical manuals, but also medical books. I need to speak with you, Victoria said, in private. Liam wiped his hands on a rag and guided her into his office. It was a small space with a metal desk, an old but functional computer, and those walls full of diplomas she had noted before. Now, with the implicit permission to be there, Victoria read them carefully. Doctor of Medicine from a leading red brick university. Certificate of Specialization in Neurosurgery. Academic awards. Honorable mentions. All in the name of Dr. Liam Alexander Davies Smith. You were a neurosurgeon, Victoria stated, looking at the diplomas. I was many things, Liam replied, sitting in his worn chair. Now, I'm a mechanic. Why? Why did you leave medicine? Or why did you accept being a mechanic? Both. Liam leaned back, his eyes distant with memories that clearly pained him. My father had an accident 9 years ago, a severe traumatic brain injury. The doctors said he had no hope, that we should let him go, but I knew they were wrong. There could be signals they were overlooking, neurological patterns indicating residual brain activity. And what did you do? I left my residency. I took control of his treatment. For a full year, I was with him every day, applying neurological rehabilitation techniques I had studied, but which most doctors consider too experimental or laborious. And it worked? My father woke up. Victoria felt something strange moving in her chest. It was empathy, an emotion she had successfully suppressed for years. But there's more to the story, Liam continued, his voice becoming more strained. While caring for my father, the hospital where I worked pressured me to return. They said I was wasting my talent, that my father was a lost cause. When I refused, when I insisted there was hope where they saw none, they began an investigation into my professional competence. They revoked your license? It didn't go that far, but it became clear that if I returned, I would always be the doctor who abandoned his patients, who prioritized emotion over science. My reputation was ruined before it truly began, so I decided not to return. And the garage? My father recovered, but he could no longer handle the physical work. Someone had to keep the business going. I knew cars. I had spent my adolescence helping him here, so I became a mechanic. Liam smiled sadly. Turns out fixing cars is remarkably similar to surgery. Complex systems requiring precise diagnosis, steady hands, and patience. But you're still a doctor, Victoria said. You can't just turn off that knowledge. No, you can't, Liam agreed. That's why when I saw you that day, when I noticed certain signs in your posture and your reflex movements, I recognized a pattern. And when I held you during that near fall, I felt muscular resistance where there shouldn't have been any. Small, but there. Victoria took a deep breath. Doctors have told me for 8 years there's no hope, that I must accept my condition and adapt my life. Why should I believe you over them? You shouldn't, Liam replied honestly, at least not without evidence. That's why, if you truly want to explore this, we'll need to do a full assessment. I can't use official medical equipment. I lost those privileges, but I know manual neurological assessment techniques that are as precise as many modern tests. And if you discover there's a possibility of recovery, what then? Then I'll design a rehabilitation program. It will be intense, painful, and there are no guarantees. You could work for months and recover only a little sensation, or you could recover much more. We don't know until we try. Victoria studied him for a long moment. This man had sacrificed a promising career for his father. He had endured the rejection of his colleagues for believing in something others considered impossible, and he had been hiding in this garage, using his magical hands to fix engines instead of saving lives. "There's something you need to understand," Victoria said slowly. "For 8 years, I've built a life around my condition. I've accepted certain limitations. I've found power elsewhere. If you give me hope, and then that hope turns out to be false, I won't just be physically where I started. I'll be emotionally destroyed." "I know," Liam nodded. "Hope is the most dangerous emotion for someone with a spinal cord injury. That's why I don't promise miracles. I only promise honesty and my best effort. And if it works," Victoria continued, "if I really can recover something, it will be because a mechanic did what the world's best neurosurgeons said was impossible. Do you understand how humiliating that would be for me? More humiliating than spending the rest of your life wondering if there was an opportunity you didn't take?" Liam asked gently. The question hit Victoria like a punch. He was right. He was completely right. "All right," she finally said. "Do it. Evaluate me. And if you find something real, something that justifies this madness, I'll consider your rehabilitation program." Liam nodded and stood up. "I'll need about 2 hours. Can you stay?" Victoria looked at her limited edition Cartier watch. She had 3 meetings scheduled that afternoon, all important for businesses handling millions of pounds. But suddenly those meetings seemed utterly insignificant compared to the possibility, however remote, of recovering something she had assumed lost forever. "Cancel everything," she told Mr. Finch over the phone. "I'll be here for as long as it takes." As Liam prepared the space, moving Victoria's chair to a more private area of the workshop and covering the windows for privacy, she watched his movements. They were precise, professional, the movements of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. He wasn't a mechanic playing at being a doctor. He was a doctor disguised as a mechanic. "I'm going to need you to trust me," Liam said when he was ready. "Some of these evaluations can be uncomfortable. If at any point you want to stop, just say so." "I won't stop," Victoria replied with determination. "Do what you have to do." And so began one of the most extraordinary sessions Victoria would ever experience. For the next 2 hours, Liam performed a neurological evaluation that rivaled anything she had experienced in elite hospitals. He used his hands as diagnostic instruments, applying pressure to specific points, eliciting reflexes, evaluating microscopic muscle responses, and slowly, methodically, he found what he was looking for. "Here," Liam pressed a specific point on her lumbar spine. "Do you feel this?" "Yes," Victoria whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "It's small, like a distant tingling, but yes." "And this?" He moved his hand slightly lower. "Also, my God, I feel that too," Liam continued, documenting every response, every sensation, every tiny sign of neurological activity that shouldn't have been there according to her official medical records. When he finally finished, he sat in front of her, his expression serious but hopeful. "Lady Sterling," he began, "your injury is not complete. There are residual neurological pathways. They are weak, very weak, but they are there. With intensive rehabilitation, specifically designed to activate those pathways, there is a real possibility of recovery." Victoria looked at him as if he were a ghost, an impossible made flesh. "How much recovery?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I can't promise you'll walk again." Liam was brutally honest. "That would be irresponsible. But I believe we can recover significant sensation, perhaps some muscle control, and hopefully enough function to dramatically improve your quality of life." The tears Victoria had been holding back finally fell. For 8 years, she had accepted a life sentence with no possibility of change, and now a grease-stained mechanic was telling her there was hope. "Why?" she asked between sobs. "Why didn't the other doctors detect this?" "Because they weren't looking," Liam replied simply. "Your initial injury was severe. Doctors saw the obvious damage and assumed it was complete, but spinal cord injuries are complex. Sometimes there are neurological pathways that survive but enter a dormant state. They're not dead, just sleeping, and with the right stimulus, they can awaken." "When do we start?" Victoria asked, wiping her tears. "That depends on you," Liam said. "The program I design will be brutal. Daily sessions of 3 to 4 hours, painful exercises, slow and frustrating progress. There will be days when you'll want to give up, when you'll wonder if it's worth the effort." "I won't give up," Victoria affirmed with a ferocity that surprised even herself. "I've survived 8 years in this chair. I can survive whatever it takes to get out of it." Liam smiled, and for the first time, Victoria saw genuine approval in his eyes. "Good, because we're going to need that determination. We start tomorrow. If you're ready, I'll be ready," Victoria promised. As Mr. Finch drove her back to her ancestral home that night, Victoria looked out the window at a city she knew so well, but which suddenly seemed completely different. The world hadn't changed, she had changed. For 8 years, she had used her disability as armor and as a weapon, as an excuse to isolate herself, to justify her cruelty, to keep everyone at a distance. But this mechanic with magical hands and a secret past had just offered her something more dangerous than any threat: possibility. And Lady Victoria Sterling, the woman who controlled empires but couldn't control her own body, was about to discover that the real challenge wasn't physical, it was emotional. Because regaining the ability to walk would mean confronting all the reasons why she had stopped trying in the first place. The dawn of the next day found Victoria awake. She hadn't slept. She had spent the entire night staring at her bedroom ceiling, processing what was about to begin. At 6 inches the morning, when her private nurse, a middle-aged woman named Rosa, who had worked for her for 3 years, entered for the usual morning routine, Victoria was already dressed in sportswear she had specially ordered for the occasion. Lady Sterling, Rosa seemed genuinely surprised. "Are you going out so early?" "I'm going to the garage," Victoria replied, applying cream to her hands with precise movements. "And Rosa, I need you to prepare my exercise room. It's going to have a different use now." The exercise room in Victoria's mansion was a 200 square meters space that had been designed by the country's best physiotherapists and then abandoned after 6 months of frustrating attempts. It had state-of-the-art rehabilitation equipment, all now covered with sheets like ghosts of past hopes. "Are you sure?" Rosa asked gently. She had been present during those 6 devastating months when Victoria had tried every conventional treatment and all had failed. She had seen the pain, the frustration, and finally the resignation. "I've never been more sure of anything," Victoria replied with a determination that made Rosa step back involuntarily. Liam's garage officially opened at 8, but Victoria arrived at 7. Liam was already there, which didn't surprise her. There was something about this man that suggested hard work was not an obligation, but a nature. "You're early," Liam commented, coming out of his office with 2 cups of coffee. He offered one to Victoria, who accepted it with a surprise she couldn't hide. In her world, people served her, they didn't offer. "I wanted to start," Victoria admitted. "I don't want to lose another day." Liam nodded with approval. "Good, because what I'm going to ask you to do will challenge everything you think you know about limits." He guided her chair to a section of the garage that had been completely transformed overnight. Where before there had been tools and car parts, now there was a professional exercise mat, resistance bands, and several devices Victoria recognized from her own abandoned exercise room. "You did all this last night?" she asked, genuinely impressed. "With help from my mechanics," Liam replied. "They know what I'm doing. In fact, 2 of them have worked with me on similar cases over the past few years." "Similar cases? You mean?" "You're number 17, Liam admitted. "Patients other doctors gave up on who found their way to this garage in one way or another. Not all have been successful, but approximately 60% have experienced some degree of recovery." The revelation left Victoria momentarily speechless. This man had been performing medical miracles in secret from a car garage, helping people the official medical system had abandoned. "Why don't you do this officially?" she asked. "Why hide here?" "Because the medical system requires things I cannot or do not want to provide," Liam replied as he prepared the space. "It requires credentials that were unfairly denied to me. It requires charging prices most of my patients could never afford. And it requires following protocols that I know from experience are not always the best." "So, you work for free?" "I work for what people can afford," Liam corrected. "Some pay nothing, others, like you, have resources. If you decide to pay me, that money goes into a fund that helps other patients." Victoria processed that information. In her world, everything had a price, and that price was usually exorbitant. The idea of someone providing specialized medical services for what people could afford was revolutionary and humbling, because it meant this mechanic had something all her money couldn't buy: genuine principles. "Let's begin," Liam announced. "First assessment. I'm going to transfer you from the chair to the mat. I need you to trust me completely." Victoria felt a knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. For 8 years, transfers had been performed by professional medical staff with specialized equipment. The idea of being carried by a mechanic in a garage seemed almost absurd, but there was something in Liam's eyes that conveyed absolute competence. "All right," Victoria nodded. Liam approached, and his hands found specific positions on her body. On 3, he counted. 1, 2, 3. The movement was fluid, perfect, professional. In seconds, Victoria was lying on the mat, and she hadn't felt a moment of insecurity or fear. Liam had moved her with the precision of someone who had done this thousands of times. "Now we'll start with basic assessments," Liam explained as he knelt beside her. "I'm going to touch different points on your legs and feet. I want you to tell me if you feel anything, no matter how small. Don't guess, don't assume, just report what you truly feel." For the next hour, Liam performed the most exhaustive evaluation Victoria had ever experienced. And to her growing astonishment, she felt things, not much, not always, but they were there. Small sensations of pressure, distant touches that shouldn't exist, echoes of what had once been complete sensation. "This is incredible," Victoria whispered after a particularly clear response. "How is it possible? Your spinal cord is like a motorway," Liam explained as he worked. "The accident caused a major blockage on that motorway, but some bypass roads survived. They are damaged, weak, but there. Our job is to rebuild those roads, make them stronger, create new connections. And that's possible? The human brain is the most adaptable thing in the universe," Liam responded. "It can create new neurological pathways when old ones are blocked. It's a process called neuroplasticity. Conventional medicine recognizes it, but generally underestimates its power." When the assessment ended, Liam helped Victoria sit up. His expression was serious but hopeful. "All right," he said, "here's the unfiltered truth. You have more residual neurological activity than I initially thought. That's the good news. The bad news is that recovering function will require work that will probably be more intense than anything you've ever done in your life." "Tell me what I need to do," Victoria replied without hesitation. "We'll start with neuromuscular electrical stimulation, combined with intensive physical therapy. 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. The exercises will be painful. Your body will protest. You'll want to give up." "I won't give up," Victoria affirmed. Liam studied her for a long moment. "There's something else you need to understand. This process isn't just physical. You're going to have to confront emotional reasons why your body might have been holding on to this condition." "What does that mean?" "It means that sometimes the body maintains conditions because they serve a psychological purpose. I'm not saying your injury isn't real, but I am saying that recovery will require you to explore why a part of you might be resisting healing." The suggestion initially infuriated Victoria. "Are you saying this is psychological? That I'm choosing to be in this chair?" "No, Victoria," Liam replied calmly. "I'm saying that the mind and body are connected in ways that Western medicine is only just beginning to understand, and that true healing requires addressing both." Victoria wanted to argue, wanted to defend her position, but something in the way Liam had said it made her pause. For 8 years, she had used her chair as a shield, as an excuse to control everything around her, to keep people at a distance, to justify her cruelty as a response to trauma. What if part of her really was clinging to this condition because it gave her power in a twisted way? "All right," she finally said, her voice softer. "I'll do the physical and emotional work." Liam smiled. "Then, let's begin. Today, we're going to establish your baseline. I want to see what you can do now so we have something to compare later." The next 90 minutes were the most physically challenging Victoria had experienced in years. Liam guided her through exercises that activated muscles she had assumed completely dead. He used electrical stimulation to provoke muscle contractions. Then he taught her techniques to try and replicate those contractions voluntarily. At first, nothing happened. Her legs remained completely inert no matter how hard she tried. But Liam was persistent, adjusting techniques, trying different approaches, searching for that spark of neurological connection. And then, after 40 minutes of frustrating attempts, it happened. Victoria was intensely focused on her right big toe, trying to move it as Liam had instructed her. She had tried this thousands of times during the first few years after the accident, always without result. But this time, with the combination of Liam's electrical stimulation and her own fierce concentration, she saw something impossible. Her toe moved. It wasn't a big movement, barely a millimeter, perhaps less, but it moved. "Oh my God," Victoria cried out, tears instantly welling in her eyes. "It moved. My toe moved." Liam leaned closer, observing carefully. "Again. Try again." Victoria concentrated all her attention, all her will, on that toe, and slowly, painfully, it moved again. This time, a little more clearly. "Yes," Liam celebrated with her, a genuine smile illuminating his face. "That's it. That's the connection we needed to find." Victoria was openly sobbing now. 8 years of hopelessness, pouring out in tears that were half relief and half absolute terror. Because if this was possible, if she really could recover function, It meant everything she had been told was a lie. It meant she had spent 8 years accepting a sentence she perhaps didn't have to accept. "It's not your fault," Liam said gently, as if he could read her mind. "Doctors worked with the information they had, they did their best, but sometimes best isn't enough." When the session ended, Victoria was physically and emotionally exhausted. Liam helped her back into her chair with the same professional care he had shown before. "Rest today," he instructed. "Your body needs to process what we've just done. We'll continue tomorrow." "Liam." Victoria called him before he could leave. "Thank you. Not just for this." She gestured towards the exercise mat, "but for not giving up when you saw something others didn't." Liam nodded. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Victoria, even those who don't believe they deserve it." The words stayed with Victoria all the way home. She had treated Liam with absolute contempt at their first meeting. She had threatened him, insulted him, judged him completely based on his appearance, and he had responded with compassion, with professionalism, with a gift he didn't have to give her. For the first time in 8 years, Victoria wondered who the person looking back from the mirror really was. Over the next 3 weeks, Victoria transformed. She arrived at Liam's garage every morning at 7, before the other mechanics arrived. She worked with an intensity that surprised even Liam, pushing her body beyond limits she had assumed absolute. And slowly, miraculously, her body responded. The toe movement expanded to more toes. Then she began to feel stronger sensations in her feet. One memorable morning, she managed to slightly flex her ankle. These were small, microscopic victories compared to full function. But for Victoria, they were monumental. But the real change wasn't just physical. It was in how Victoria began to see the world and herself within it. One morning she arrived early and found Liam working on an elderly woman's car. The woman wore worn but clean clothes. She was worried, explaining she needed her car to get to her job at the hospital where she cleaned rooms. "I don't have much money," the woman admitted with embarrassment, "but I can pay in installments." "The work is done," Liam interrupted gently. "There's no charge." "But I can't accept charity," the woman protested. "It's not charity," Liam responded with a smile. "It's an investment in my community. You care for the sick in that hospital. I care for the people in my neighborhood. We all do our part." Victoria watched this interaction from her car, where she waited for Liam to finish, and felt something strange and unfamiliar moving in her chest. Shame. Shame for all the times she had treated acts of kindness as transactions, for all the times she had assumed people only helped when it benefited their own interests. "Do you see that often?" Victoria asked when the woman left, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "What thing?" Liam responded, already focused on preparing the space for their session. "People who can't pay. Most of my clients can't pay what a normal garage would charge," Liam admitted. "That's why I charge what they can. Some pay in full, some pay partially, some pay nothing. In the end, it all balances out." "That's no way to run a business, Liam," Victoria commented, though her tone was more curious than critical. "Now, it depends on what you define as success in a business," Liam replied. "If it's just money, then no, it's not efficient. But if it's building a community where people look after each other, then I'm the most successful man I know." The philosophy was so radically different from everything Victoria had operated under her entire life that it left her speechless. In her world, success was measured in numbers, quarterly profits, share value, return on investment. The idea that success could be measured in smiles of gratitude, in strong communities, in people helping each other, was completely alien. But as she watched Liam work, as she saw how his other mechanics respected him, not out of fear, but out of genuine admiration, as she noticed how clients returned, not because they were forced to, but because they completely trusted this man, Victoria began to question everything she had believed about value and success. "I want to do something," Victoria announced one afternoon after a particularly successful session where she had managed to flex both ankles simultaneously. "What thing?" Liam asked as he cleaned the equipment. "I want to officially fund your work. I want to create a foundation that allows you to help more people like me, people the medical system has abandoned." Liam paused in his cleaning, his expression becoming cautious. "Victoria, that's generous, but—" "No, but," Victoria interrupted. "I've spent 8 years using my money to build walls around myself. I want to start using it to build bridges, to help others, and your work deserves resources it doesn't have." "And what would you want in return?" Liam asked, clearly expecting conditions. "Nothing," Victoria replied simply. "Only that you continue doing what you do, helping people others have abandoned, demonstrating that miracles are possible, when someone refuses to accept limitations. Liam studied her for a long moment, as if evaluating whether this change in Victoria was genuine or temporary. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right, but with one condition of my own, which is that you work in the foundation, not just funding it, but involved, meeting the patients, understanding their stories, because I believe that will be part of your own healing." Victoria opened her mouth to protest, then stopped. Liam was right. For 8 years, she had been locked in her ivory tower, isolated from real humanity. Perhaps it was time to reconnect. "I accept," she said. That decision changed everything. Over the next few weeks, Victoria not only continued her intensive rehabilitation, but began to get involved in the lives of the other people Liam was helping. She met Robert, a 20-year-old who had been paralyzed after being shot in a mugging. She met Elena, a mother of 3 who had suffered a traffic accident and had been told she would never feel her legs again. She met Mark, an elderly man who had had a stroke and was slowly regaining motor function. Each story was different, but all shared the same theme: people whom the official medical system had given up on, but who had found hope in the magical hands of a mechanic who refused to accept impossible as a final answer. And Victoria learned something fundamental. Her pain was not unique, her struggle was not special. It was part of a community of people fighting against limitations others had imposed on them. "Do you know what the hardest thing is?" Elena told her one afternoon as both did rehabilitation exercises side by side in the garage. "It's not the physical pain, it's the way people look at you, as if you're not completely human anymore." Victoria felt those words like a punch, because for 8 years, she had looked at others exactly like that. She had reduced people to their jobs, their bank accounts, their utility to her. She had not seen them as completely human. "I used to be like that," Victoria admitted softly. "I looked at people and only saw labels. Mechanic, cleaner, chauffeur. I never saw the complete people behind those labels." "And now?" Elena asked curiously. "Now I see that I was the most disabled of all, not in my body, but in my humanity." It was that same week when Victoria made a decision that surprised everyone who knew her. She called an emergency meeting of the board of Sterling Pharmaceuticals, the company her family had built over 3 generations. The boardroom on the 45th floor of the city's tallest corporate building was filled with men and women in expensive suits, all observing Victoria with mixtures of curiosity and concern. Rumors had been circulating about changes in her behavior, about visits to a garage, about strange investments in unconventional rehabilitation programs. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria began, her chair positioned at the head of the 20-meter mahogany table. "For the past 8 years, I have run this company from a position of isolation. I have made decisions based solely on profit margins, without considering the human impact of those decisions." The silence in the room was absolute. No one had ever heard Victoria admit vulnerability or error. "Recently," she continued, "I have learned some important lessons about value, about purpose, about what success truly means. And I have decided to make significant changes in how we operate as a company." "What kind of changes?" asked Richard Morrison, the CFO who had worked with the Sterling family for 20 years. "First, we will establish a medicines access program for people who cannot afford full prices. Second, we will invest 30% of our annual profits in research for treatments for conditions that are generally ignored because they are not sufficiently profitable. And third, we will partner with community clinics to provide accessible medical care in underserved areas." The murmur that followed was one of shock and disapproval. The chief operating officer, a man named Thomas Bradford, spoke with a tense voice. "Lady Sterling, with all due respect, those proposals would reduce our profits by approximately 40%. Shareholders will never accept it." "The shareholders will accept it because I am the majority shareholder," Victoria replied calmly. "And I have decided that this company will do more than generate wealth. It will generate hope." "This is madness." Bradford stood up, his face reddening. "What has happened to you? Is this the mechanic everyone is talking about? Has he brainwashed you?" "On the contrary," Victoria responded, and for the first time, a genuine smile appeared on her face. "He has helped me to see clearly for the first time in my life, and what I see is that I have been measuring success with the wrong metrics." "Then perhaps you shouldn't be running this company," Bradford challenged. "Perhaps you're right," Victoria agreed, surprising everyone. "Perhaps it's time for this company to be run by someone who understands that medicine should not be a business that prioritizes profit over lives." The meeting ended in chaos. 3 board members resigned immediately. Others threatened legal battles, but Victoria held her ground firmly. and to her surprise, some board members, especially the younger ones, expressed support. "My father worked for your grandfather," said Jennifer Chen, a 35-year-old executive who had recently been promoted. "He always spoke of how the company used to have soul, used to care about people. I'm glad to see it's returning to those roots." That night, Victoria returned to Liam's garage. He was closing up, cleaning the day's tools and preparing everything for tomorrow. When he saw her enter, he immediately noticed something different in her expression. "What happened?" he asked. "I just possibly destroyed the family business," Victoria responded. But she was smiling. "And ironically, I've never been prouder of myself." She told him about the meeting, about the proposals, about the resignations and the chaos. Liam listened in silence, wiping engine oil from his hands as she spoke. "Do you think I did the right thing?" Victoria asked when she finished. "Does it matter what I think?" Liam replied. "Yes, it matters a lot." Liam sat on a metal stool, his eyes meeting hers. "I think you did the right thing, but I also think it was the easy decision." Victoria blinked in surprise. "Easy? How can risking a family empire be easy?" "Because money has always been abstract for you," Liam explained. "You've never had to worry about rent, about putting food on the table, about choosing between medicine and electricity. Deciding to use your wealth to help others is noble, but it doesn't really cost you anything on a personal level." The words hurt precisely because they were true. Then what would be the difficult decision? Changing how you treat the people you encounter every day, confronting the prejudices you've held all your life, learning to see dignity in every person regardless of their job or their bank account. That's the difficult thing. Victoria processed that in silence. Liam was right. It had been relatively easy to write a big check or change corporate policies. The difficult thing was to change her own heart. "Teach me," she finally said. "Teach you what? How to see people the way you see them. How to find value where I've been blind to it all my life." Liam smiled. "You're already learning. Every day you come here, every conversation you have with Robert or Elena or Mark, every moment you choose humility over arrogance. You're learning." It was in that moment when one of the other mechanics, a young man of about 25 named Andy, approached shyly. "Excuse me, Lady Sterling," he began nervously. "I just wanted to say what you're doing with the pharmaceutical company. It's important. My sister has diabetes. She can't afford her full insulin. She's been rationing it, putting herself at risk. If your program can help people like her, it's going to save lives." Victoria felt tears forming in her eyes. For 8 years, she had run a pharmaceutical company without really thinking about the real lives affected by her decisions. She had seen numbers on spreadsheets, not people like Andy's sister struggling to survive. "What's your sister's name?" Victoria asked. "Maria," Andy replied, surprised by the question. "I want to meet her, and I want to make sure she has all the insulin she needs, starting tomorrow." Andy looked like he was about to cry. "Lady Sterling, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," Victoria responded softly. "Thank Liam for teaching me to see people instead of numbers." After Andy left, Liam and Victoria stood in silence for a long moment. "You know what's strangest?" Victoria finally spoke. "For the first time in 8 years, I don't feel defined by this chair. I feel defined by who I'm choosing to be." "That's because you're healing," Liam observed. "Not just your body, though that's progressing incredibly too, but you're healing the parts of you that were broken long before the accident." The words resonated deeply with Victoria. She had assumed her primary trauma was the horse riding accident, the spinal cord injury, but now she was beginning to see that she had been wounded long before that, wounded by a life of privilege that had isolated her from real humanity, by years of learning that money was more important than people, by an upbringing that had taught her to measure value in material terms. "Liam," Victoria said softly, "may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever regret leaving medicine, sacrificing your career for your father?" Liam considered the question carefully. "Before, yes. The first few years were very difficult. I saw my residency colleagues advancing in their careers, becoming the successful neurosurgeons I had planned to be. I wondered if I had wasted my potential. And now? Now I see that I wasted nothing. I just took a different path. I've helped more people from this garage than I would have in an elite hospital where only the wealthy have access. I've built a community based on mutual care instead of financial transactions. And I've learned that true success isn't measured in titles or prestige, but in lives touched and hearts changed." "You are the wisest person I have ever met," Victoria admitted. "I'm not wise," Liam laughed. "I'm just someone who learned his lessons the hard way and decided not to waste that pain." It was during that conversation when Victoria realized something fundamental. She had fallen in love with Liam, not romantically necessarily, although there were elements of that too, but in a deeper way. She had fallen in love with his way of seeing the world, with his unwavering compassion, with his refusal to allow the system to define what was possible. But more importantly, she had fallen in love with who she was becoming under his influence. The cruel, bitter woman she had been was slowly dying, replaced by someone Victoria barely recognized, but who she liked infinitely more. 2 months after their first encounter, Liam decided Victoria was ready for the next level of her rehabilitation. Today, he announced with a smile that made his eyes sparkle, "We're going to try something you'll probably think is completely crazy. After everything we've done, nothing would surprise me," Victoria responded. "We're going to try to get you to stand." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria felt as if the entire world had stopped. "Stand?" she finally whispered. "Liam, is that possible?" "It is possible," Liam completed. "You've been making incredible progress. You have sensation in most of your legs. You have partial muscle control in your ankles, knees, even some function in your hips. It's time to see if we can turn those small victories into something bigger. But what if I fall? What if I get hurt? You won't fall because I'm going to hold you, and you won't get hurt because I'll be there every second. Trust me, Victoria." And she trusted him completely. This man had taken her from hopelessness to hope, from resignation to possibility. If he said she could stand, then she would try. Liam prepared everything meticulously. He installed parallel bars he had specifically built for this moment. He positioned safety mats. He called 2 of his most experienced mechanics to help as additional support. "All right." Liam knelt in front of Victoria, his hands finding familiar positions on her legs. "We're going to do this in stages. First, I'm going to help you stand up. I'll support most of your weight. Your job is simply to try and activate the muscles we've been rehabilitating. Ready?" "Ready," Victoria responded, though her voice trembled. Liam moved her carefully from her chair to a position between the parallel bars. His hands held her waist firmly as slowly, centimeter by centimeter, he guided her to a vertical position. And then, for the first time in 8 years, Lady Victoria Sterling was standing. Liam supported most of her weight, and her legs trembled violently with the effort, but she was upright. She was looking Liam in the eyes instead of up at him. She was experiencing a perspective she had assumed lost forever. Tears streamed down her face, but she barely noticed them. All her focus was on maintaining this position, on activating every muscle Liam had taught her to awaken. "That's it," Liam encouraged her, his voice soft but firm. "Feel your feet against the ground. Feel your weight distributing through your legs. Your body remembers how to do this. You just need to remind it." Victoria concentrated with an intensity that bordered on the mystical, and to her absolute astonishment, she felt something. Her legs weren't just hanging useless. They were supporting a small but real fraction of her weight. "I feel it," she exclaimed. "I'm supporting some of my weight." "Yes," Liam celebrated. "That's exactly what I wanted to see. Now I'm going to reduce my support a tiny bit, very little. I want you to try and maintain your balance." He reduced his grip slightly, and Victoria felt her muscles protesting fiercely against the additional work. But she held on, trembling, unstable, but standing. It lasted only 30 seconds, but they were the most miraculous 30 seconds of Victoria's life. When Liam finally helped her back into a chair, she was sobbing uncontrollably. "I stood," she kept repeating. "I really stood." The other mechanics who had witnessed the moment were applauding. Some had tears in their own eyes, because all had seen Victoria when she first arrived, arrogant and cruel, and all had witnessed her transformation. "This is just the beginning," Liam told her, kneeling in front of her and taking her hands. "With practice, you'll be able to stand for longer periods. Eventually, with the right support, perhaps you can even take steps." "Steps?" Victoria could barely utter the word. "I'm not promising you'll walk independently," Liam was careful to clarify. "But I believe we can get to where you can walk with assistance. A walker, perhaps eventually just canes. It won't be easy. It will take months, perhaps years, but it is possible." Victoria hugged him then, not caring that he was covered in engine grease, not caring about the tears that stained his uniform. Only this incredible man mattered, who had refused to accept impossible as an answer. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I never give up on people who are willing to fight for themselves," Liam replied, gently returning her hug. "And you, Victoria, are a fighter." The following weeks were a roller coaster of emotions and discoveries. Victoria practiced standing every day, gradually increasing the time she could support her own weight. 20 seconds became 30. 30 became a minute. And then, on a memorable day, she maintained her position for 5 full minutes. But the real challenge came when Liam announced the next step. "It's time to try a step," he said one morning after Victoria had managed to stand for almost 10 minutes with minimal support. "A step?" Victoria felt terror and excitement mixing in equal proportions. "Liam, standing is one thing, but moving my legs—" "I know," Liam nodded. "It's exponentially more complex. It requires coordination, balance, and strength that you're still developing, but I think you're ready to try." He prepared a system of safety harnesses that would support her if she lost balance. He positioned the parallel bars so she had something to hold on to, and then, with infinite patience, he began to teach her the biomechanics of taking a step. "Walking is basically controlled falling forwards," he explained. "You transfer your weight to one leg, slightly lift the other, move it forward, and then transfer the weight again. Your brain used to do this automatically. Now we have to consciously teach it each element." The first attempt was an absolute failure. Victoria managed to stand. She managed to transfer her weight to her right leg, but when she tried to lift her left leg, her muscles simply refused to cooperate. She would have fallen if Liam hadn't held her. "Again," Victoria ordered, fierce determination in her voice. "Your body needs to rest," Liam warned. "Again," Victoria repeated, and Liam recognized that expression. It was the same one he had seen in dozens of patients who were about to achieve something impossible. Pure, unbreakable will. They tried again and again and again. For 2 hours, Victoria tried to take a single step, and each time she failed, but with each failure, she learned something. Her muscles gradually remembered how to coordinate. Her brain rebuilt neurological connections that had been dormant for years. And then, on the 37th attempt, it happened. Victoria was standing at the parallel bars, her weight on her right leg. She took a deep breath, visualizing the movement as Liam had taught her, and then, with a concentration so intense, she could feel sweat forming on her forehead. She lifted her left leg. It wasn't a smooth lift. Her foot dragged along the ground with evident resistance, but it moved forward, barely 10 centimeters, but it moved. And when it touched the ground again, Victoria was standing in a new position. She had taken a step, her first step in 8 years. The workshop erupted in celebration. All the mechanics had been watching, their own jobs forgotten in favor of witnessing this miracle. Andy was openly crying. Even the tough, 60-year-old veteran named Charlie had tears in his eyes. But no one was more excited than Liam. His smile was so wide it lit up the entire room. "You did it, Victoria!" he exclaimed. "You took a step, just one." Victoria laughed through her tears. "And the ugliest, clumsiest step anyone has ever taken. It's the most beautiful step I've seen in my life," Liam replied with complete sincerity. "Because it's a step the world's best doctors said you would never take." Victoria looked at this man who had completely transformed her. Not just her body, though that was miraculous in itself, but her soul. He had forced her to confront who she had been, who she wanted to be, and the distance between those two versions of herself. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said softly. "You're wrong," Liam responded. "I just showed you the way. You did all the work." Over the next 2 months, Victoria worked tirelessly on perfecting that step. 1 step became 2, 2 became 3, and then, in a moment that would be etched in her memory forever, she walked 5 full meters with minimal support from Liam. It wasn't normal walking. Each step required intense concentration. Her right foot dragged slightly, her balance was precarious, but she was walking really, genuinely walking. But as her body transformed, Victoria realized there was another challenge to face: the outside world. For months, her rehabilitation had been private, contained within the safe confines of Liam's garage. But now it was time to confront the society that had known her only as the disabled woman in the titanium wheelchair. The opportunity came when the city's Chamber of Commerce invited her to give the keynote speech at their annual gala. It was an event Victoria had religiously avoided for 8 years. The idea of being exhibited in her chair, of being the object of pity or performative admiration, had been intolerable. But now something had changed. "I'm going to attend," Victoria told her assistant Margaret over the phone. "And Margaret, don't mention my chair in any promotional material. In fact, don't mention my condition at all." "Are you sure?" Margaret asked, clearly confused. "It's been your brand for years, the successful CEO who overcame adversity." "I don't want to be defined by my disability," Victoria responded. "I want to be defined by what I'm doing now." On the night of the gala, Victoria dressed with a care she hadn't employed in years. She chose a long dress that would cover her legs, but was elegant rather than functional. She applied makeup not to hide, but to highlight. She styled her hair in a way that spoke of confidence rather than control. And when it was time to enter the ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel, Victoria did something no one expected. She arrived walking. She used a specialized walker that Liam had modified for her. Her steps were slow, deliberate, but she was walking, and the effect in the room was electric. The murmur of conversations instantly ceased. All heads turned, and for a moment there was absolute silence as 500 people processed the impossible. Lady Victoria Sterling, whom everyone had known as permanently confined to a wheelchair, was walking. And then, as if someone had given an invisible signal, the room erupted in thunderous applause. It wasn't the polite applause of corporate events. It was something more visceral, more genuine. It was the recognition of having witnessed something extraordinary. But Victoria raised a hand to silence them, and gradually the applause died down. "Please," she said when the room was silent, "don't applaud me for walking. Applaud the man who refused to accept the word impossible as a final answer." She gestured to where Liam stood at the entrance, dressed in the only suit he owned, clearly uncomfortable among all this wealth and prestige. He had insisted on not coming, but Victoria had convinced him by telling him that tonight wasn't about her, but about honoring his work. "Liam Davies," Victoria continued, her voice resonating through the hall. "He is a mechanic. He repairs cars in a modest garage on the east side of the city. But he is also something more. He is a brilliant neurosurgeon who left his career to care for his father. He is a healer who helps people the official medical system has abandoned, and he is the reason I am standing here tonight." She could see faces in the audience changing from expressions of curiosity to comprehension to something that might have been shame, because many of them, in different ways, had contributed to a system that valued credentials over capability, that measured success in money instead of changed lives. "For 8 years, Victoria continued, her voice gaining strength, "I was the disabled CEO who supposedly inspired others. But the truth is, I was a bitter woman who used her disability as an excuse to treat others with cruelty. I used my chair as a weapon and as armor." The silence in the room was now uncomfortable. No one expected this kind of brutal honesty at a corporate gala. But Liam taught me something fundamental, that true disability is not physical. It is the inability to see humanity in others. It is the inability to recognize value beyond titles and bank accounts. It is the inability to grow, change, and become a better person. Victoria paused, allowing the words to resonate. "Tonight, I am announcing the Davies Foundation for Alternative Rehabilitation. It will be funded with £100 million from my personal fortune. Its mission will be to provide treatment and hope to people with spinal cord injuries who have been given up on by conventional medicine." The applause that followed was different from the first. It was more sober, more reflective, because everyone in that room knew that Victoria had just fundamentally challenged the medical status quo. "But this isn't just about money," Victoria continued when the applause subsided. "It's about changing how we value people. It's about recognizing that brilliance can exist in a garage as much as in a corporate tower. It's about understanding that true success is measured in lives touched, not in accumulated profits." She looked directly at Liam, who had tears streaming down his face. "Liam gave me the ability to walk again, but more importantly, he gave me the ability to see clearly, to feel deeply, to live authentically. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a gift no money can buy." When her speech ended, Victoria walked slowly from the podium to where Liam stood. Each step was visible effort, but she took them with dignity and purpose. And when she finally reached him, she took his hand. "Thank you," she said simply. Liam didn't trust his voice to respond, so he simply embraced her as the entire room rose to a standing ovation. But for Victoria, the real moment came later, when a young woman approached shyly. It was Andy's sister, Maria, the one with diabetes. "Lady Sterling," Maria spoke with a trembling voice, "I just wanted to say, the Medicines Access program you started literally saved my life, and now, seeing what it did for you, it gives us all hope that real change is possible." Victoria felt tears forming in her eyes. For 8 years, she had searched for meaning in the wrong places. She had thought power came from controlling, that success was measured in domination, but now she understood that true power came from lifting others up, and true success was measured in hope created. The following months were transformative not only for Victoria but for the entire city. The Davies Foundation opened its doors with Liam as medical director, but he insisted on one condition, that he continue working in his garage 3 days a week, because, as he explained, it was there he found his best ideas, surrounded by engines and the honest work of his mechanics. The foundation employed the best physiotherapists, neurologists, and rehabilitation specialists money could buy, but all worked under Liam's philosophy: never accept impossible as a final answer, never abandon a patient, never allow the limitations of the medical system to dictate what was possible. Victoria continued her own rehabilitation. 6 months after her first step, she was walking with only a cane. Her gait would never be completely normal. She would always have a slight limp in her right leg, but she was mobile, she was independent, and more importantly, she was completely transformed. 1 year after their first meeting at the garage, Victoria organized a celebration, not in a lavish ballroom, but in the same auto workshop where it had all begun. She invited all the patients Liam had helped over the years, the mechanics who had witnessed her transformation, and the people whose lives had been changed by the foundation. Robert, the young man who had been shot, could now stand with assistance and was working towards independent steps. Elena, the mother of 3, had recovered enough sensation to care for her children in ways she had thought lost forever. Mark, the elderly man with the stroke, was walking with a walker and had recovered most of his speech. Each story was a testament to the power of refusing to accept limitations, to the importance of seeing potential where others saw impossibility. During the celebration, Liam approached Victoria with a serious expression. "There's something I need to tell you," he began. "What is it?" Victoria asked, immediately worried by his tone. "The university hospital contacted me. They've reviewed my case. They want to reinstate my medical license and offer me a position as head of neurological rehabilitation." Victoria felt a mixture of emotions. Joy that Liam was finally getting the recognition he deserved, but also fear of losing him, of him choosing to return to the official medical world and abandon the work they were doing together. That's incredible," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "What did you tell them?" "I told them no," Liam replied simply. "What? Why?" "Because I realized something. I don't need the validation of the medical system to know my work has value. I don't need a title on a door to know I'm helping people. And frankly, I can help more people from my garage and the foundation than I could in any hospital limited by protocols and bureaucracy." Victoria hugged him then, not caring that they were surrounded by people. "You are the most extraordinary man I have ever met. I'm just someone who learned that true success doesn't come from what the world gives you," Liam responded, returning her hug, "but from what you give to the world." As the celebration continued around them, Victoria reflected on the extraordinary journey she had taken. It had begun with an arrogant woman, laughing cruelly at an impossible promise, and had ended with that same woman walking, not only physically but spiritually. The mechanic had kept his promise. He had made her walk again, but more than that, he had made her live again. He had taught her that real value is not in what you have, but in who you are and how you treat others. 2 years after their first encounter, Victoria stood in the same spot where she had once arrived in her titanium chair, despising everything and everyone around her. But now she was standing on her own legs, surrounded by people she loved and respected, doing work that truly mattered. Liam was beside her, no longer the grease-stained mechanic she had underestimated, but her partner in transforming lives, her closest friend, and the person who had taught her the true meaning of hope. "Do you ever regret it?" Victoria asked him one day as they watched a new patient take their first tentative steps. "Regret what? Helping me, taking a risk with someone who treated you so badly?" Liam smiled, that smile Victoria now knew so well. "Never. Because you taught me something too." "What thing?" "That everyone deserves a second chance, that real transformation is possible, and that sometimes the most difficult people to love are the ones who need love the most." The words resonated in the air between them, laden with truth and affection. And as Victoria looked around, at the foundation they had built together, at the lives they were changing, at the community of hope they had created, she knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true purpose. It was not to be the wealthiest woman in the city, it was not to run a corporate empire, it was not to be admired or feared, it was to be part of something greater than herself. It was to use her resources to create opportunities. It was to demonstrate every day that real change, both physical and spiritual, was possible when someone refused to accept impossible as a final answer. The mechanic had promised to make her walk again, and he had done it. But the real miracle was not the movement of her legs, it was the movement of her heart, from closed to open, from bitter to compassionate, from selfish to generous. This transformation, Victoria knew, was the greatest gift Liam had given her. and it was a gift she would pass forward every day for the rest of her life. Because in the end, this was never a story about walking. It was a story about awakening, about a woman who had been asleep in her privilege, and a mechanic with magical hands who had awakened her to real life. And now, finally, Victoria Sterling was completely, wonderfully, miraculously awake. 5 years after that first encounter, the city had changed in ways no one could have anticipated. The Davies Foundation had expanded its operations to 6 different cities, helping over 1,000 patients who had been given up on by conventional medicine. The results spoke for themselves. A 72% rate of significant recovery, meticulously documented stories of miracles, lives transformed one at a time. But the deepest impact was not measured in numbers or statistics. It was measured in how Liam's philosophy had begun to infiltrate the medical establishment. University hospitals now included assessment of residual neurological potential as part of their standard protocol. Medical schools taught cases from the Davies Foundation as examples of how persistence and individualized attention could achieve results that conventional treatment considered impossible. Victoria had become a passionate advocate not only for alternative rehabilitation, but for a broader philosophy, that human value is not measured in physical ability, formal education, or material wealth, but in the impact each person has on the lives of others. She had donated most of her fortune to various causes, keeping only enough to live comfortably, but not ostentatiously. Her mansion had been converted into a residential rehabilitation center, where patients could stay during their intensive treatments. Her fleet of luxury cars had been sold, the money used to purchase specialized medical equipment. And she, the woman who had once measured her worth in bank account digits, now measured her life in smiles of patients taking their first steps, in tears of families reunited with renewed hope, in the simple satisfaction of knowing that every day she made a real difference. The auto workshop remained open. Liam insisted on keeping it running, not only for the modest income it generated, but because it was there, surrounded by honest work and the smell of engine oil, that he found clarity and purpose. His mechanics, many of whom were now also certified rehabilitation technicians, divided their time between repairing cars and helping to repair lives. One spring afternoon, Victoria arrived at the garage and found Liam working on an old car. It was a model she recognized immediately, the same Mercedes she had brought 5 years ago, the one that had started this whole extraordinary story. "That car?" she asked with a smile. Liam slid out from under the vehicle, his face now marked with lines that spoke of 5 years of intense but satisfying work. "The owner never picked it up. It was left abandoned here. I thought about fixing it up and donating it." Victoria approached, her steps now completely sure, although she still used a decorative cane more for caution than necessity. She caressed the bonnet of the car that had witnessed the beginning of her transformation. "We should keep it," she said softly, as a reminder of where we started. Liam stood up, wiping his hands on a rag that immediately made them dirtier. That gesture, which had once seemed to Victoria like evidence of inferiority, now she saw as the mark of someone unafraid to get their hands dirty doing important work. "You know what's most extraordinary about these 5 years?" Liam asked, leaning against the car. "What? It's not the number of patients we've helped, although that's incredible. It's not the recognition the foundation has received, although that's gratifying too. It's how your transformation inspired chain transformations we could never have anticipated." It was true. Victoria's story had become legendary. Articles had been written, documentaries filmed, lectures given, but more importantly, it had inspired others to confront their own prejudices, to question their own assumptions about value and capability. Corporate executives had started genuine, rather than performative, inclusion programs. Schools had revised how they evaluated talent and potential. Even the medical system, resistant to change as it was, had begun to adopt more holistic and personalized approaches. "I still have difficult days," Victoria admitted, sitting in a nearby chair. "Days where my body aches, where walking is a challenge, where I wonder if all the effort is worth it." "That's completely normal," Liam responded, sitting beside her. "Healing isn't linear. It's a process with ups and downs. The important thing is that now you have tools to handle those difficult days. The tools you gave me, the tools you found within yourself. I just showed you where to look." They remained in silence for a moment, a comfortable silence that only comes from years of deep friendship and mutual respect. "Liam," Victoria finally spoke, "do you ever think about how improbable all of this was? An arrogant woman laughing at a mechanic who promised the impossible. The odds of this ending well were astronomically low." Liam smiled. That smile she had learned to love as a symbol of wisdom and kindness. Perhaps that's the most important lesson, that miracles aren't random events that happen to lucky people. They are the result of people refusing to accept limitations, working tirelessly, believing when no one else believes. You believed when I couldn't, and you worked when I couldn't work for you. It was collaboration, Victoria, like everything important in life. As the afternoon sun painted the workshop with golden light, Victoria reflected on the extraordinary journey they had shared, from arrogance to humility, from hopelessness to hope, from isolation to community, from spiritual death to complete rebirth. And she knew with absolute certainty that although her legs had been healed, that had never been the true wound. The true wound had been her closed heart, her inability to see humanity in others, her belief that money and status made her superior. That wound had been healed not by medicine or surgery, but by the persistent kindness of a man who saw potential where others saw impossibility, by a mechanic with magical hands who understood that true healing requires touching not only the body, but the soul. And as Victoria stood to leave, walking on legs that were once immobile, supported by strength that was once non-existent, guided by purpose that was once lost, she knew that every step she took was a testament to a fundamental truth. Miracles exist, but they don't come from outside. They come from the decision to believe, to work, to change, to become something greater than we were before. The mechanic had said, "I'll have you walking again." And she had laughed, but it hadn't been a lie. It had been a prophecy. Only walking had meant much more than moving legs. It had meant walking towards an authentic life, towards real purpose, towards the person she always had the potential to be, but whom privilege and trauma had kept dormant. And now, finally, after 5 years of hard work and painful transformation, Lady Victoria Sterling was completely awake, completely alive, completely herself. The journey had begun with cruel laughter and ended with profound gratitude. And that, Victoria knew, was the most beautiful story she could ever tell.